Triple H is one of the most divisive figures in WWE history. Whether you know him as Hunter Hearst Helmsley, the Game, an overbearing authority figure, or the mastermind behind NXT, he has almost certainly left an impression on your fandom, positive or negative. Backstage politician, great wrestler, pivotal cog in the company's corporate machine, and the architect of WWE's bold future, Triple H is all of these things and more, and after 26 years in the wrestling business, his career is crammed with great stories. After all, you can't stay in this business for this long without certain behind-the-scenes details going public. We all know Triple H the performer, but who is Paul Levesque when the cameras stop rolling? I'm Andy from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 fascinating backstage facts about Triple H. Number 10. A costly botch. The pedigree eventually became the most iconic part of Triple H's in-ring arsenal, but it got him and the company into a world of trouble back in 1996. Hunter was wrestling an enhancement talent named Marty Garner on an episode of Superstars. Unfortunately, when he went for his finisher, Garner mistook it for a suplex and adapted his body accordingly. This led to Marty getting planted headfirst into the mat. He sustained some nasty damage and went after the company in court, which led to public appearances on a number of mainstream chat shows and a boatload of bad publicity. The two parties eventually reached a settlement, and despite all this, WWE continued using Garner as a jobber after he'd healed. Isn't that nice of them? Number 9. Jealous of RENÉ DUPRÉE. Triple H is a 14-time world champion, a future Hall of Famer, and Vince McMahon's heir apparent. The idea that he'd be jealous of RENÉ DUPRÉE, a lowly mid-carder best known for kicking about with a bloody poodle, sounds ridiculous, but it may well be the case. On a 2016 podcast appearance, DUPRÉE told a story about the company seamstress taking his measurements for new attire. When they found out that his guns were bigger than Hunter's, they panicked and deliberately marked the measurements down by a couple of inches, so the Game would still be the big man. This sounds daft, but DUPRÉE's trainer, Rip Rogers, has since backed him up, claiming that the practice was the norm with Triple H, whose fragile masculinity apparently knows no bounds. Number 8. Nixing Kurt and Stephanie. The Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, Kurt Angle love triangle storyline that took place during the summer of 2000 was supposed to end with Steph leaving her husband for the Olympic hero, but it never came to pass. Instead of Angle and Steph ending up together as some kind of weird heel power couple and Triple H going babyface, the feud concluded with 3 straight pay-per-view losses for Kurt. Why? Because the Game said so. The story goes that Hunter nixed the storyline because he thought it was unrealistic that Stephanie would ever leave him for a man like Angle, and that the audience wouldn't be able to buy into it. Thus, he went over strong, and Kurt looked like a goof. Number 7. He wanted Edge fired. Edge retired as an 11-time world champion in 2011, but his Hall of Fame level run may never have happened if Triple H got his way 6 years prior. While most of the wrestling world agreed that Edge was in the wrong during the Matt Hardy and Lita situation, WWE stood by him, feeling that he, not Matt, was the more marketable commodity. But not Triple H. Like many other employees, the Game took umbrage with Edge's actions and wanted to fire him for stealing his supposed friend's other half, but he was ultimately overruled by the higher-ups. Instead, Hardy was released, leading to widespread fan outrage before he was eventually brought back for a memorable, heated feud. Number 6. Killing his own push. Triple H was originally supposed to win King of the Ring 1996, thus kickstarting his ascent to stardom, but the Madison Square Garden curtain call incident soon put an end to that. They embraced in the ring after an MSG house show, thus shattering kayfabe into a million tiny little pieces, as 2 of them were working heel at the time and the other 2 were babyfaces. Vince McMahon was seething, but he couldn't punish the departing Hall and Nash, and Michaels was his golden boy, so of course Triple H took the brunt of it. Steve Austin won King of the Ring instead, and Triple H was made to wait another year before winning the tournament. He became a major star in the end, of course, but he had to wait for it. Number 5. Asking the Undertaker's permission. Triple H and Stephanie McMahon's coming together was always controversial, as not only did it lead to the perception that he was dating his way to the top, but it started as an affair while the game was still seeing China, ultimately leading to the ninth wonder of the world's WWE departure. Paranoid about what his roster mates might say if he was dating the boss's daughter, the game actually sought advice from The Undertaker beforehand, as he was already recognised as WWE's locker room leader. He reportedly asserted that Triple H and Stephanie's business was nobody's but their own, encouraging Hunter to go for it. A few years later, the dead man was a groomsman at their wedding. Aww. Number 4. Protecting his image. A man of indomitable vanity, Triple H has always been immensely conscious of his own public perception, with this being one of the most over-the-top examples. In the build-up to the SmackDown vs Raw 2009 video game, publishers THQ were reportedly forbidden from using any promo material that depicted the game getting beaten up or in any other kind of weakened state. Triple H was WWE champion at the time, but were the company really that insecure about his image? Apparently so. The story was reported by several UK magazines, who were also told that they weren't allowed to show the game in such states in their own publications. But in the end, WWE's weird stance painted a worse picture than any pixelated beatdown ever could. Number 3. WCW didn't rate him. While Vince McMahon identified Triple H as a pushable commodity almost from day one, his first major employers disagreed. WCW did not value Triple H at all. They wrote him off as a preliminary guy, so when he came asking for a bigger push in January 1995, he was all but laughed off. But the joke was on them in the end, as WWE snatched him away from Ted Turner's promotion and thus began the rise of one of their most decorated modern stars. WCW's stance was laughable in hindsight. Granted, Triple H wouldn't have prevented their inevitable demise, but there's no excuse for letting such a hot prospect slip away. Number 2. The Katie Vick debacle. Destined to forever be remembered as one of WWE's worst ever angles, the Katie Vick storyline was an absolute travesty. Televised necrophilia in a wrestling promotion? Just why? But it happened, and while we don't need to go through the revolting specifics again anytime soon, Bruce Pritchard recently revealed some interesting new details on his Something to Wrestle podcast. As per the former WWE writer, the whole scene played out in a legitimate funeral home, while an actual wake was going on in the next room. So while Triple H was, and I quote, screwing the body's brains out, people were saying goodbye to a loved one through the next wall. Now granted, Pritchard has a reputation for exaggerating his stories, but if this is true, it isn't just gross, but disrespectful in the extreme, particularly as they were reportedly told to quieten down when the carnal sounds drifted into the next room. Number 1. Sowing the seeds for the Montreal Screwjob. As the single most infamous moment in WWE history, the Montreal Screwjob is a deep, murky tale that has been told thousands of times from thousands of different POVs. Thus, it's often different to separate fact from fiction, but it's generally accepted that Triple H, not Shawn Michaels or Vince McMahon, came up with the framework. As per HBK in his book, Heartbreak and Triumph, the game was the first to suggest a screwjob, stating, Brett, if he doesn't want to do business, we'll do business for him. A plan was hatched, but Triple H's influence went even further. He came up with the specific spot that ended Bret Hart's WWE career, when the Survivor Series 1997 match was called off with him stuck in his own sharpshooter but not tapping out. Triple H wasn't the architect of the Montreal Screwjob, but he definitely sowed the seeds.
Why would you look at that? You got all the way to the end of the video and your mother said you'd amount to nothing. What are the chances? While you're here, why not watch one of our other many, possibly quite good channels, or watch another video which will be largely in the same vein as the quality content you've just endured. Go on then.